everyone, and welcome along to a very special edition of the VCO Studio show, hosted by me, Ben Constanduros, because it's coming to you from inside a car, which is kind of different. Here at VCO, we are passionate about merging the world of real and esports racing, something I'm also very passionate about, and something that is encapsulated in the man that we're meeting this evening. Cem Bölükbasi, not only an amazing esports racing star for many, many years across many different platforms, but also translating that experience and that performance into the real world of motorsport. And that is why we have Cem with us this evening, because in the opening round of the SRO GT World Challenge, the name was suddenly known to a much greater audience, Cem. We're going to get onto your experiences last weekend. But firstly, I want to say a massive congratulations on what you managed to achieve, both in the real world and for us virtual fans as well.
Thank you very much. I mean, first of all, thank you for having me. I mean, like you said, I've been on the esports scene for quite a long time. I've been on the motorsports team for motorsports scene for much longer than esports. But I mean, the last few years has been crazy with, let's say, the growth of esports and sim racing. So I had the opportunity to actually translate some of the skills from esports to real racing. And like you said, I mean, last weekend was pretty crazy in Imola, and I think we'll talk about that more in detail in just in a bit.
Yeah, so I think you might have seen some of the things that we've been doing over the last 10 weeks here on VCO. I think this might be the 10th or 11th show. Talk about a little bit of your early life getting into racing, whether it be in the real world or the virtual world, first off.
I mean, I first started in the real world with karting. Actually, I was first motocross racing when I
Oh, wow.
was it was when I was 5 years old. I did 1 year of motocross racing with like 50cc with 50cc bikes. They're very small, but I mean for a 5-year-old, it doesn't look that small. It was quite fast when I was 5 years old. It felt quite
Oh,
fast.
yeah.
But then I did it for a year, and then my parents told me that they realized that was too dangerous, so we switched to four-wheel drive, four wheels, and that's when we switched to karting. I did karting for like I think 6 or 7 years in Turkey and on international level, in Europe as well.
Wow.
So then I tested the Formula 4 car and the British F3 car. Had some good tests done in those cars. That was I think when I was 16 or 17, so 5 6 years ago. But then we never actually found a sponsor to cover the full season, and that was the year when I switched on from real racing to sim racing. When
Okay.
I was just doing iRacing to just, I mean, practice because I enjoyed driving, and I told myself that if I couldn't drive in real life, then I should just drive it in the simulator because it was actually quite close to how it felt compared to real life. So I was quite lucky there in terms of timing because they just announced the F1 Esports Series. So I had the opportunity to qualify for the finals there, and I think I won one race, finished fifth overall in the championship in 2017.
Yeah, yeah.
I signed with G2 Esports team first, and then they merged with Fernando Alonso, so I had the opportunity to work with Fernando Alonso as well. So it worked. It all started very suddenly, and it was like hard to believe for myself as well because I got myself in somewhere I dreamt of in just a year. So that's how my esports journey started.
But like, talk about a little bit about sort of your switching your discipline. So, okay, motorsport, motocross, and going into karting,
Yeah.
completely different worlds, really. But did you feel it was an easy translation from going to real world into, well, I say sim racing, but obviously F1 is not necessarily a sim platform.
I mean, in like I think starting off as first game like something like iRacing or R Factor really helped me out
Right.
because starting off with like one of those hardcore simulators, it's really like if you're good on those games, I think it's much easier for yourself to translate that skill to a game like F1 or I don't know, Project Cars maybe, or something like that. But I think the other way around is much more difficult. So I think me starting on iRacing R Factor was a big plus side for me, and I always enjoyed F1 games nonetheless. So yeah, I mean, we still practiced really hard. I mean, it wasn't easy. I think there was over 100,000 competitors online
Yeah.
participating. So yeah.
But like the way of driving, I can imagine from karting and cars going into iRacing has some way of translation. But you speak to some of the guys who are iRacing hardcore, and very, very fast at that, can't get
Mhm,
their head around something like the F1 platform, but you were able
mhm.
to be fast in all of these different platforms, whether it be real or virtual.
Yeah, so I spoke to some of the real life drivers as well, and they had a lot of difficulties playing like simcade games, let's say, like Pro Cars or F1. But they also told me that they were very quick on iRacing or R Factor, but they were never really as quick on games like F1. But I think my one of my chances I had was when I first started playing racing games, I played almost all of the games available on the market. So I didn't just, um, let's say, play one game and focused on one game, which looked like a downside because it's always better if you just focus on one game. But in the end, it also helped me just learn about all the games possible, which made me, I guess, which made it easier for me to transition from one game to another. So yeah, I'm quite happy about that. But I enjoyed, like you said, I mean, racing in various different games.
When you got into sim racing, it was at such an
Hmm.
advanced stage that you must have already kind of treated it incredibly professionally.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that you experienced and thought, "Oh, I will make that." I'll end up in a professional world like someone like Sebastian Job did. When you
Hmm.
joined, it was instantly, this is a professional reason for joining, and this is a professional thing that is going to help me either in experience or even profile.
Yeah, I mean, when I first joined, like you said, I mean, when I first joined, actually, it was more like a hobby because I wanted to just get to know the games to see
Yeah,
how realistic they were, to check if that was actually if it was really close to real life. But when I got into it, like you said, I mean, it was already in a super uh, advanced period of time. So I didn't really have that. I didn't really do it as a hobby because I had to spend a lot of time and commit a lot of my free time on it. So when I first started, I already started playing like 4 or 5 hours a day to just get into grips. And I think I've played for like 4 or 5 hours a day for like 4 or 5 years, let's say.
wow.
So that is quite a lot of hours when you think about it.
That's a serious commitment, but it obviously
Yeah.
paid off for you because, as you say, you were picked up by G2 Esports, which is a
Hmm.
massive organization in
Hmm.
esports, regardless of sim
Yeah.
racing, and it
Yeah.
was a great moment for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think in 2017, I think basically all the stars aligned for me. So I qualified through to the F1 Esports finals. I did my first contract with G2 Esports, and then they also announced that they're merging with Fernando Alonso to create FA Racing G2. So it all happened quite quickly, and I was at the front seat for it.
Yeah.
So I had to take it seriously very quickly. I couldn't really do it as a hobby after that, anyways. Like you said.
So being part of FA G2 Esports, obviously a huge kind of step up for you at that moment. What were the
Mhm.
highlights of that experience?
I mean, honestly, I was into esports for a long time, anyways, and it wasn't just the racing side. I enjoyed watching, let's say, Counter Strike games or maybe Rocket League games. But when I got into G2, I also started watching League of Legends, for example. But yeah, so I was watching other games as well, and it was actually quite fun. So, and I already knew these names. So when I got an offer from a team like that, I was like, wow, okay, sim racing must be getting quite huge if a team like this is investing into it. And since I was new to the scene as well, technically, I took the opportunity, and it was like I said, it was a very professional environment. Working with these people, meeting these other esports players, like the Rainbow Six team we had, like, or maybe Rocket League team. So it was like understanding how other esports games were working and how they were progressing compared to sim racing, and it was good to see the growth of sim racing side compared to other, let's say, the normal esports games.
I guess your profile is best known because of what you've done on the F1 Esports games, but you were in high level competitions in R Factor and iRacing as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously F1 has the highest, let's say, viewer base for it. So when we ask people, they probably know me from F1 game. But before F1 game, I qualified for the first WFG finals on R Factor 2. Um, I think I also got the World Championship license on iRacing, and I was 10 in the championship, maybe even top 5 in world championship on iRacing before F1 Esports was announced. That's when I had to quit iRacing World Championship Series and focus on F1 Esports. And before I
Okay.
did iRacing Pro Series, I did Daytona 24 hours and stuff like that. So I was into iRacing in many other games. It was just the F1 Esports, like I said, had millions of viewers, so it's much easier for people to know me from that game.
And is that what's important to you, to have recognition and ultimately to help you in a career further forward?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, recognition always helps the follower base or the interaction you get from followers and fans because, I mean, we're in a digital world in the end. It's 2020, and you need to have that follower base or interaction or engagement rates to help your career out. It's not just about playing well or just doing well. You need to have something else in others because everyone is also on the same level as you.
Now you're back in the real world again, and
Mhm.
you're in the SRO Championship in the BMW, the Turkish BMW. How has
Yeah.
that come about, and is that down to your performances in esports?
I would say yes because the team actually knows me from esports scene, and they wanted to give me a shot in the real car in Paul Ricard last year, which was a track I knew quite a bit from F1 games and other games. So I think they told me that they want to give me a shot in on the track in the race. It was like a 45 car grid. I've never been in a race car before that weekend, and I saw the car for the first time I think on Wednesday, and the first and my qualifying was on Friday already, so I didn't have much time to get used to the car or the track or anything. But I think I qualified fifth in my class, sorry, third in my class, and we finished fifth in the race.
Well,
And then they said that they want to give me a second chance in Misano. That's where we got second place and got our first podium as a team. So I think after those two results, they also told me that they would want to do the full season with me in 2020. So that's how my real life racing career started, basically, which is a big surprise. I mean, I wasn't expecting anything like it, but at the beginning, my like biggest, let's say, target was to get back into real racing through esports and sim racing. And like you said, I
mm,
mean, I have to race against people that have raced on that track multiple times, raced with those cars for multiple years. So the only advantage I have is that the practice I have in simulators, and that's the only place where I can just basically cover the gap to them.
and it feels like all of these challenges, whether it be in the virtual or in the real world, kind of come naturally to you. You don't seem phased by this idea that you're jumping into a GT3 car and having to be, well, and being as fast as everybody else.
I mean, to be honest, the simulators are very close to real life. I mean, I have to admit, sometimes it even feels like you're wearing a VR glass at some point. I mean, that's how close it is. I mean, but I mean, I guess the biggest difference is getting used to the speed, the feeling of speed, because you can go 250, 300 kilometers per hour in a game. You won't feel anything. But in real life, when you're going 250 or 300, you do feel something, or going through the corners quickly or breaking super late. I mean, I think as soon as I got used to that, it was more down to my experience in sim racing where I can translate uh, the sim racing skills to real life skills, because I think it's also important to know what is realistic in games and what isn't. For example, maybe, I don't know, track limits, for example, or the curb
Mm.
usage can be easier in the games compared to real life. So that's where you kind of need to understand if you can do that as well in real life or not.
You talked about R Factor, you've talked about
Mhm.
iRacing and F1, but of course, the perfect preparation ground, presumably for your forays into GT racing, is ACC. Is that a
Exactly.
platform you've been enjoying recently?
Definitely. I mean, I first tried the simulator last year when I had to practice for Paul Ricard and Misano. But I mean, I was going to drive the GT4 car and they only had the GT3 car. So what
Yeah.
I did was to, I think, change the engine mode to like the safety car mode, which has like less horsepower. And I lifted the car up to the highest position and just made it basic and gave it such less downforce that it felt basically like a GT4 car. So that's how I practiced for the first few
Nice.
races until they added the GT4 pack, obviously, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
But I mean, the the attention to detail in tracks in that game, ACC, is crazy. I mean, I think I also compare it to iRacing in other games, but ACC really is different. It has so much more detail because possibly because it's the latest released game, but it's one to one. I couldn't find any differences. Even the color of the curbs, shape of the curbs, the feeling of the curbs. Uh, it's quite crazy how close it is to real life track.
So as a person maybe watching this going, I would like to experience what it is like to be in a real world race. Which of those platforms, and you've got a really good experience of all of them, do you feel best replicates the real world?
I mean, honestly speaking, for the GT cars and how updated it is, ACC is on a different level, I would say.
Yeah.
But in terms of like online experience, racing with others, having fun while being competitive, iRacing's online experience is going to be the highest level of competition, let's say maybe, or also highest level of fun, because you always like the iRating system and the safety rating system. I mean, it's a simple system, but it works really well. So I would recommend that for like competitive or fun side of things. But in terms of realism, I would say for the GT cars right now, ACC definitely has the best physics.
So moving forward for you, obviously you've now kind of achieved a goal in getting back into a championship, and obviously the annoying Corona pandemic has had to delay that debut for you. But do you now take the throttle off your sim racing and focus on your real world, or are you going to try and keep everything in parallel?
I have to keep everything in parallel because the more sim racing I do, the more helpful it is for my real racing. So, again, all the free time I have is going to be either spent on sim racing or my fitness side to get better in real racing. Because the more time I spend on sim racing, I think it makes me faster also in real life. So, I can't just focus on one or the other. I have to do both of them at the same time. I won't be doing 10 hours a day sim racing, obviously, like if it's the F1 Esports finals, but I want to use the sim racing platform as a practice, let's say, environment for my real life races. I want to go to Misano in a GT4 car in ACC, drive for hours and hours to practice for my real life GT4 race in Misano, which is next week.
Cool. I mean, that's great. Does that mean the F1 dream is kind of put to one side for the moment then?
Not really at all, because I think to switching to single seater cars, it's going to be all about sponsors. So if I find
Yeah.
any extra budget, which we're working really hard on, um, I definitely want to try again a single seater cars. Like I think I have a great deal on the GT4 side, but if we have an opportunity or let's say an extra budget that we can spend on another race, then my plan is to do maybe add into the season one or two single seater races. Could be, I don't know, from the Renault Euro Cup or something like that, or let's say British F3. So I think the single seater dream is always on. Yeah.
And are you still hoping to appear in the F1 Esports series when it kicks off again?
This year it's going to be difficult because it's at the same time as the GT4 races. So
Yeah.
even if I don't feel like I can commit myself 100% to F1 esports, which is something I need to do to perform well there. So if that's the case, then I'll put myself as a reserve driver or a third driver, let's say. But I want to be in that scene, either on a different role. But I want to be there to watch how F1 esports is growing, and I want to be a part of that because I want to support the series. I want that series to do well because where I am now is all thanks to that series, and I want to help them grow. And they also help me grow the F1 social side. They always help me. I mean, sharing something on social media about me from the F1 account is always, I mean, the value is crazy. So I think having their backup there is very important and having their support. So I want to support them as much as I can as well.
Cem, you're a absolutely fascinating guy.
Thank
Really
you.
interesting to hear your different approach to sim racing to many of the other people that we've spoken about. This for you is very much a career, and you're thinking like a marketeer, and that is why, in part, alongside your amazing speed, why you're as successful as you are. So thank you so much for joining
Thank
us
you very
on
much. I mean, thank you
VCO.
for
You
having
are,
me.
I mean, you are the epitome of what we're trying to do here at VCO Motorsports. So
Thank you.
thank
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 you.
you very much, and good luck with everything. We will see you at some point, or I will see you at some point in a real life racetrack. And
Oh, yes.
looking forward to following the rest of the season.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I mean, I'll see you soon as well on the racetrack.
Yeah, I need to get back to a racetrack too.
Yeah.
And that's it for another edition of the VCO Esports Studio show. Thank you very much for joining us. Make sure you tune in every Monday evening at 8 p.m. European time for some of the very best in real and virtual world, chatting to me, Ben Constanduros. Who knows who it might be next week? But we do know it'll be one of the best in the world. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.